So in this week's Creative Confidence Catch Up, I'm going to be chatting to Marina. So Marina, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, first off, thanks so much for having me, Amy. I am, as you said, Marina. I'm a B2B content marketer, and just last year I founded my own agency. And when I'm not, marketing on LinkedIn and everything, I love to paint, spend time outside, and bake.
Wow, that sounds very creative, I must say. Like when I think of content, I think of like it being creative, but not so much in like the painterly sort of like the
Yeah.
artistic form, if that makes sense. So when you said like painting and things like that, I love that. And baking, that's it, that's a bonus. So my first question to you today, then, in terms of everything that you're doing at the moment, then, what does confidence mean to you?
I'd say that confidence to me is believing in yourself in the simplest kind of form and believing that, the things you do, they're worth it. You're worth it. I think that's the best way that I would define it for myself. And that's something that I really struggled with growing up. So I'm happy to say that over time, I've kind of solidified that definition for myself and really embraced it.
Right. That's really interesting. So when you came to boosting confidence and things then, have you ever always wanted to kind of work in the industry that you're working in now then? Is that something that kind of go, oh, I want to do that, and in order to gain my confidence, I might get it in this field? Did you ever think that?
No.
No, no. How did that come
No.
about then? Like the whole like industry that you're in then?
So it absolutely just happened. A lot of things in my life kind of just fell into place that way,
Oh,
and my
great.
current career is one of them. Yeah. So I grew up in a very STEM-oriented household. Both of my parents are very math and science people. They worked with computers my whole life, and I was always pushed in that direction as well. And I was good at it. I was like, I enjoyed it to an extent, but I always just thought that that was the only thing that I could do. So yeah, for a long time, I was like, okay, I'm going to become a programmer like my dad. I'm going to die a programmer. That's going to be my life. And over time, as I got older, kind of in the academic part of my life, I was studying different things. I did programming, economics, political science, and
Wow.
ultimately I got my master's degree in the field of political science. But the whole time up until that point, I had always been working in marketing without ever realizing it. So I was always doing web design, I was copywriting, I was managing social media, but it was always like a thing I did on the side, because my
Hmm.
parents were like, yeah, this isn't a career, it's just for now, it's something you can do for now. And it wasn't until, I don't know, there was a certain point after I got my master's degree and I was working, I was like, huh, people will pay me to do this full time and they respect me for it and they like the work I do. And that's kind of crazy to me. And it clicked in my head that I was like, oh, this is a thing I could do. At that point, my confidence was already better than it was when I was younger. I'd say that shift kind of happened when I started college for me. So the two weren't really hand in hand. But yeah, that's kind of what my path looks like in a way.
Wow. Were you quite academic then, would you say? Or were you kind of one of these people that are creative and have always wanted to be creative? And I suppose the academic subjects kind of slightly bored you a bit, because I found that like personally where I like wasn't that much of the academic, but I found that more creative sort of things just linked and aligned with me a whole lot more.
So again, weird dynamic for me because I was totally like you in that sense. I always enjoyed things that were creative. And for me, that really included a lot of writing things, a lot of coming
Uh-huh.
up with stories and bringing them to life and creating my own art for books, even though I wasn't great at
Wow.
it. I just
That's
enjoyed
so
it.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, with my family and kind of the environment I grew up in the Silicon Valley in California, everyone around me was very academics focused. So I spent ages 4 to 14 in a private school where any test grade below 90% was seen as a failure, basically.
Whoa, that's
Anything below
bizarre.
80%, yeah, required a parent's signature to confirm that your parents kind of saw your horrible grade and that you didn't hide it from them. So growing up in that environment with parents who were really strict, very academics driven, it was tough. So I realized I was kind of cheating my way through a lot of tests. I was becoming very creative in how to do that because
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know. I was smart. I can't say that I wasn't smart as a kid, but it just never resonated with me. All this blind memorization and recalling of facts, to get that 95%, just to get some kind of pat on the back from a teacher just didn't mean anything to me. So those creative subjects really resonated with me. But again, it was drilled into my mind that you will never do anything with this in your life. This is just for fun. This is a hobby. I remember when I was a teenager and I was reading a book and I said to my dad, hey, I would love to write something like this one day. And he said, well, you can do that outside your job. And I still remember that. It was just this little thing, and he didn't mean anything bad by it, but
No,
I was
no.
like, oh, writing books is just a side gig. You don't do it, as work. And that was always kind of weird to me.
That's interesting you say that because I speak a lot about expectations, societal expectations, and like in terms of like creativity, a lot of people don't see like the creative side being a job, or it can't like
Yeah.
an art form can't be a job and you can't make money for it from it. So it seems to me there that you have, even though it's not wasn't intentional, that like family or people around you were saying, oh, it can't be a job or you'll never like get creative and make a living. It sounds like societal expectation, it can be a bit of pressure, can't it? And
Yeah.
for enable you to be able to do what it is that you want to.
Absolutely. And it was always a weird dynamic because every evening my parents would watch a TV show together. And guess
Mm.
what? That TV show was made by, you guessed it, creatives. And both of my parents read obsessively. Every lunch I'd see my dad take out his book, put it on the table and read. And I was like, well, guess what? An author wrote that, a creative author who does that for a living, like very likely, or, at least a big part of their living. And I grew up watching these fantastic movies and shows, from Russia, as that's where my family's from the Soviet Union, that were just so beautifully done. And again, done by who? Creatives. So it was a weird dynamic where I'm being told, well, this doesn't matter. But at the same time, our society does place an emphasis on the value of creativity, and we reap the benefits of what creatives are putting out there. So that's something that even when I was little, I was like, wait, I don't get it. Like, why can't I write a book, but you love reading books? I don't get it.
So in terms of like owning your creativity then, who would you say then might have been an influence in that? Has that been like people in terms of family, friends, colleagues in workplaces? Who would that be, would you say?
I'd say that came about kind of early. And again, maybe at the time I didn't realize it, but now in retrospect, it really stands out to me. It was my third grade teacher.
Mm.
We're still Facebook friends,
Oh,
where she's still
wow.
like, yeah, she still sees like, that I'm traveling, what I'm doing, where I live. And she's always so excited for me. She's just
Mm.
the sweetest woman. And, I'm so grateful that I had her as a teacher because unlike my second grade teacher, for instance, who was always kind of on me for being like, you're not getting the math properly, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. It was a lot of reprimanding me. My third grade teacher immediately noticed that I have a talent or a gift when it comes to the creative things, especially writing. And the stories I wrote, she pulled me aside one day and she was like, Marina, this is really good. Can I read this to the class? And I was like, what?
Mm.
I was like, what do you mean? Like my
Oh,
work to the
wow.
class? And she's like, yes, I won't even say your name if you're like shy about it. I just really want to share this because this is beautiful. And again, I was 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old, and I remember that to this day. And people loved it. When she read it, people listened. They weren't just doodling, they weren't just gossiping, talking on the side. They listened. And she didn't know at the time the impact she had, but that really made me realize that creativity is something to be cherished. It's important, it's valuable. And even though I was kind of fighting those inner demons as time went on and as I got older, that story really just kind of stuck with me. That experience really stood out to me. And I do thank her for putting me on that path as I got older and not being afraid to be like, hey, this is what I want to do. Don't care what people say.
Yeah, I love that. And do you find that in terms of creativity then it has to be like sort of encouraged and supported by other people? Because obviously if it's not, then there's more of a chance it's going to be stifled because like, yeah, society in a way doesn't allow it.
Definitely, definitely. And I don't think it has to be that way. So I don't think if you don't have the support, you'll never get anywhere. But I think having that support makes a world of a
Mm.
difference. I mean, I was fortunate in the fact that even if it was as a hobby, my family did support my creative endeavors. I was writing poetry a lot when I was younger, and my parents were always so excited to read it. And even if my dad was like, you can write a book on the side, he still loved the idea that I wanted to write a book. Maybe it wasn't as encouraged as it was in some families, but it was still something that my parents were like, wow, this is awesome. And my mom to this day is like, Marina, I want this on my wall. Can you paint this for me? Or like, we
That's
did
so
this
cool.
trip. Can you make a painting from Iceland? Yeah, exactly. So I think while it's not mandatory, it does help to have that support system around you.
Mm. So as we're talking about support systems, then I think this really is great in terms of like for the community in terms of LinkedIn right now. So we got chatting as a result of another person on LinkedIn, didn't we? Which was really cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, finding these people who kind of resonate with what you're all about and what you do. Yeah, how are you finding LinkedIn at the moment?
I like LinkedIn a lot for that reason because, a lot of people think it's just a strictly professional platform. And I do use it for matching with prospects and, people who
Yeah.
end up being clients. But at the same time, I love being able to have this conversation. I'm not here to make money from you. You're not here to make money from me.
Yeah,
We're just
exactly.
talking.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. And I love that. And I've had that a lot on LinkedIn that I just vibe with someone. I talked to this guy. I'm not entirely sure what he does, but I know he makes kombucha and he's like a science guy. So it really is down to science for him. And I've started making kombucha and we just talk about
Nice.
kombucha. And I'm sure he has a family, he has a career. I just know him as the kombucha guy.
That's ace.
And I love that,
That,
so it's things like that.
it is. It's like that though, isn't it? It's like when you go on LinkedIn and you're not quite sure, like of the people straight away because like once you get connected, then you get to learn more about them. But it is one of those where it's like, oh, that person's known for this, that person's known for that. Oh, I could actually reach out to them and have a conversation about that because I was thinking that as well. That's really exciting, and I really like how LinkedIn is becoming for me. I find a platform where it is more about community. Some people say, oh, it's
Mhm.
still a bit like businessy, but yeah, I totally get like it's really nice to be able to kind of connect with all these different individuals. Like kombucha, how would you have thought that you'd be connected over like LinkedIn by that? It's crazy, isn't it?
I know, and I have no recollection how we met either. I was thinking about that and I was like, how
Uh,
did that come up? It was in some comment section and it's so random. But, I met him, I've met artists, I've met musicians, all these people who aren't, directly connected to the world
Mhm.
of B2B content marketing, but they're so cool and interesting. And I have no desire to do business with everyone I meet. And I'm just there for the relationships. And I
Yeah.
think so much good comes from it when you use it that way.
No, that's really cool. So, do you so in terms of then LinkedIn, do you have any other like favorite social platforms that you connect with others with or build connections with, or is it just like LinkedIn is like your standard platform at the moment?
No, it's definitely not my standard platform actually. So because of the creative part of things, I've also done modeling for a long time. And
Wow.
so Instagram is really big for me as well. I've met some great people through it. And again, kind of on the topic of just building those random relationships, I connected with this nature photographer a couple of years ago. And for 2 years, I had no idea like what their gender was, how old they were. Because they had a bird as their profile picture. And I was
Wow.
like, it's just this bird I talked to on Instagram. And then we found out that despite living on opposite ends of the world, we're from the same part of California. And I was
Wow.
like, what are the odds? And, we got to
That's
know each
nice.
other's people. But I was like, wow, Instagram's cool because you just connect with people on the basis of interests and you can have these random conversations and just build this relationship with someone based on, yeah, things that otherwise might not work in a real life setting. And I love that.
Yeah. And also it's that the way that conversations come about, like you it's
Hmm.
not like you'd usually walk down the street, go, oh yeah, I'm into this, are you into this? Like that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Whereas obviously with LinkedIn, for me, I find, or even with just social media, whether that be Instagram or whatever, you'll have like mutual connections with people from the
Hmm.
start. So it'll be like, oh, that person, oh, I can see they're into that. Or so it's not
Exactly.
that awkward in creating a conversation.
Yeah, I like that as well. And I feel like that also builds or brings a layer of trust to it, where
Mm.
you're like,
Oh yeah.
okay, they know this person, they're not a complete random, they're not a spam or a fake account. And I think that's awesome. You end up building a community without even thinking about it.
Oh yeah. So, my second question, my next question, should I say? So, in your industry, then, so what does creativity mean to you? I know you spoke about content and you spoke about a bit about like storytelling, things like that. What else would you? How would you define creativity for you at the moment and how it's being used?
I'd say creativity is deviating from the norm and not being afraid to try something different. So, especially in B2B, what I see is that people are trying very hard to kind of just look like each other, Whether that be, the way they present their companies, the way they present their products and services. It's all just a bunch of the same thing under a slightly different name. And I think that is the saddest thing in B2B. So creativity is really not being afraid to say, hey, I, dare to be different. I want to do something differently. And it might crash and burn and it might suck, but we're going to try it and we're going to see what happens. And to me, that's what creativity is.
And that's great. It's a great point, really, like being kind of vulnerable and being a bit open and
Yeah.
honest, that not everything always works out, because you think, yeah, this is a great post, this is really going to work, and then it's like, oh, that was an utter flop. But people can see it's like genuinely come from me and what I'm all about, rather than like, oh, that person's writing about that, so I'll write about it too. I totally get that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that happened to me recently, that I was like, this is such a good idea. People are going to love this. And then I shared it and no response. I was like, you know what? I don't care. I tried something different and we failed a little bit, but that's life. I'll try something different again tomorrow.
Yeah. And also it's like building those connections down the line. There will be somebody that probably will resonate with that post or something down the line. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be straight away. And also, when people, like, for example, if they're on TikTok or whatever, and they try and build all these views, and yeah, they might go viral with a particular video, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything, does it? Because, like, when people say, oh, loads of likes, it's like, yeah, but does it convert into anything? Are you making money from this? Is this something that's going to become your main thing? Sometimes I think people need to kind of think about that, don't they? It's not
Oh,
always
for
about the
sure.
views.
Oh, for sure. And I've had that before. I think like a year or so ago, I had this post that I was just curious what people thought. When people write like X big company in their headline, X Google, X Apple, something like
Yeah.
that. And I was like, what do you think, guys? Like, is that a good idea? And overnight, I got over 1 million views. I got tens of thousands of votes, and I got, hundreds of connection requests, but it was all useless. None
Mm.
of them were my target audience. None of them were people I vibe with. None of the comments, none of the votes, nothing was of value to me. And I was like, ooh, that's funny. Like, that blew up and that's cool to see. But at the same time, okay, and tomorrow my post is going to get 40 likes again. So what?
Yeah, I've found that like numerous times, where like at the moment I'm trying to build like a YouTube channel up in regards to the creative confidence catch up and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And it's slow and it's steady.
Yep.
But I suppose it's better than people kind of like all going, oh yeah, I'm coming on because this video, this really resonates. And then they drop off again, because then everything else of the
Exactly.
content just doesn't.
Exactly. So that's always important to keep in mind. And I think when you're active on social media, whether personally or for work, it's really easy to get caught up in chasing those metrics, even though that's not what you should ultimately be focusing on.
Love that. Well, this has been such an interesting chat today. So thank you for coming on, Marina. But the last little question that I'm going to leave you with is, any words of wisdom or encouragement that you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, I would say that even if the people around you don't 100% support what you want to do, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's not an indicator that your ideas are bad or wrong or they're going to fail. It just means that the people around you don't understand what you're doing, and that's okay, because one day they will, when you're kicking butt and doing all the amazing things that you're meant to be doing.
That's brilliant. No, such great words. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.